afternoon, sir. Good to be at the SRK Consulting. Do as always at the Mining Indaba. Your impressions thus far of the Indaba?
Yeah, thank you. Welcome to be here. We always appreciate all our partners, not just clients and our staff, including the media as well. Yeah, look, I initially came quite skeptical in terms of what to expect here, in terms of the negativity in the mining industry. But I think I'm going to be leaving here with a fair amount of positivity, in the sense that there are some green shoots that are there. Just this afternoon I discovered that there's actually some new mining projects in South Africa, and I said, wow, we never hear that in the media. I mean, one was the uranium project, although uranium or nuclear is not a popular word in South Africa. There is a uranium project happening in the Karoo in the Eastern Cape, and then the other part was there's actually a new platinum mine. It's just, in fact, they're pouring their first concentrate this week. So that was exciting news. We never get to see that in the media.
I think the media sometimes portrays the wrong side of the story.
Yeah, if you actually look at it, you see that there's a lot of. You think there's a lot of negativity, but there's actually lots of things happening in the background that you don't pick up. And I think coming to a place like the Indaba, you pick up those stories that don't really get picked up on a daily basis, and they don't seem to make headlines in their popular news. And then I felt the content. There were quite a few sessions where there was good technical content, not as in technical in science or engineering, but technical as in what the economists are saying. I found something that the one talk, Anil Gupta from the University of Maryland, he talked about, he put this any thought of people thinking that India is going to replace the void that China has created, he's put it out of the discussion. He's taken it really out of people's thought, but he's put a reality check. So whilst he's kind of dampened a few people's thoughts on the issue, what he's done is he's actually put realism in. And he said, well, yeah, the world will grow, but it's not going to be a case of India taking over where China's left off. So, and I think those are my impressions that I take away from the Indaba.
And your new book out, 40 Years of SRK Consulting, what are some of the highlights over the last 40 years for you?
I think one of the biggest stories that I say about SRK is it's amazing that you don't often hear a story of a South African company going out and actually conquering the world. And I think SRK has done that. We set out to practice in the fields that we've chosen to, certainly with a specific focus on the mining industry. And I think, as being part of the SRK company and being a leader now in the SRK, I can proudly say that actually where there's any mining activity, SRK has worked there. And if you read through the book, the stories, the projects all come through, and you see that coming through. Something else that I refer to quite a lot when I speak to staff today, in terms of a lot of people, there's a whole generation of staff in SRK that don't know a difficult time or a downturn. And when you read through that book, there's been times that SRK has faced more difficult circumstances, and not just economic. SRK in South Africa faced political issues, the political challenges in the late 80s and the early 90s, and that defines us today. The generation that lived through that built and grew the company to where it is today. And I think that's something the book will show the generation that we have that haven't seen a difficult period, how to survive and resilience. It's taught me that there's a lot of resilience, resilience helps you capture the moment and make the most of it.
So we're making too much of the current day dilemma in mining and not seeing the bigger picture that eventually everything flows there.
Well, don't discount. That's the reality. People are going to feel vulnerable because their jobs are threatened. every day. It's a daily issue where people say, well, we have got no work, or for that matter, we're not winning work. But if you put it into context, what we've gone through in the last 12, 15 years probably tells me that you have a situation where it was abnormal, and most things are now we're starting to get to what is normality. But as with anything in the market kind of tends to either go too high or too low, and it's somewhere in between. But that's a life. If you're living in the mining industry, but I think the life in general, but more specifically the mining industry, that you're going to go through these cycles of highs and lows. You just need to have the strength to get through it, and remember that things will improve when things are down, and when things are great, it's never going to be that way. So that's what I've learned out of the book in many instances, and there's a lot of stories where it showed you what SRK was about, excellence, getting the right people in, developing people, and creating an environment where people can live what they want to do in their technical or chosen fields, and grow their careers within SRK.
Absolutely, and what parallels can we draw between the water crisis and the current mining crisis? Can we also see the bigger picture there?
Well, I mean, I was listening to the minister at the opening talk at the thing, and he says, well, the mining industry is in its winter. What he also said was that certainly the mining industry didn't plan for winter, and that's something, I guess, the water crisis, again, the same applies to our electricity crisis. There was never thinking that we will run out of electricity, we will run out of water, or certain natural forces will play against us. In the South African case, with the water, certainly the drought, it's a national phenomenon. El Nino is a national phenomenon, and you can't do anything to stop that from happening, but you can reduce the impact of such. And the same with the mining industry. There was a thought that China will continue to grow forever and a day, and we'll be okay. But China can't be the engine room of the world for the rest of its days.
Well, and who's going to pick up the slack?
Well, I saw an interesting talk where India is not going to fill the void, but they will maybe make it a softer landing. But having said that, China continues to grow. 6% of a bigger base. Whilst the growth might be different focused, because it's not going to be infrastructure driven, it's going to be consumption driven. But China still needs commodities. I think what is interesting is that the first time in coming to conferences like this, I heard somebody say that Africa, in the African context, needs to kind of think about consuming themselves. Rather than being a commodity producer exporting, they need to think about using it in Africa. And I think it goes along the tune of beneficiation. But the one different thing that I saw was actually the speaker talked about Africa investing in Africa. And that is something that Africans need to think about. They need to invest in themselves. They need to back themselves. Because there's nothing worse than you not backing yourself and then expecting other people to come and invest in you. You must be confident and back yourself. Show that the opportunities that you profess that are out there, you believe it. And I think perhaps maybe Africa might help Africa to fill some of that void.
It's a shift in thinking, so to speak.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tough 2015, outlook for 2016, 2017, any light at the end of the tunnel for you?
I think, some of the projects I saw out there at the Indaba suggest there is some hope. But I think it will continue to be tough. And look, I'm no economist, and I'm not going to make a big noise about predicting the future, because these predictions can make a lot of people fools. But I think we're in for a tough time. But having said that, it's never going to be forever. It's going to improve. And to me, I think a lot of companies, and even a company like SRK, is taking the opportunity to pause and rethink what we're doing and where we're going. And within SRK itself, we're actually trying to think, or we're trying to go back to our roots and think about what is it that kept us going in very difficult times, and what is the difference between us and competitors, and what is it that we can offer the market that we service.
Absolutely. Commodity prices, another big talking point. We see from stabilization coming.
I don't know. I'm not going to make a prediction on that. I think the only thing I can say about it is a lot of people are very depressed over the weak rand. But if anything, the weak rand is going to keep our mining industry from shutting down. It'll keep the mining industry opening, certainly the operational mines, and stave any major losses in terms of closures and things like that. So that is a positive. Not that having a weak currency is a positive, but that's probably one of the positives that's out there. Might help us. But I think, look, I mean, you can't. I went to a platinum presentation, panel discussion, and it was very interesting that many of the members on that panel indicated that platinum this year will be the 4th year where the demand is outstripping the primary supply. So I mean, that tells you that something is going to give at some point in time.
But with us mothballing the mines, are we going to be behind the game when the demand is really at peak?
Well, it depends how they do it. Because I mean, if they mothball in a careful way so that they can switch on when the upturn comes, then they'll be in a good position to do that. And I think they're taking quite a different approach to the oil industry. The oil industry is saying, well, we'll produce to keep share, but you've seen the price has gone to levels that's not it's going to put a lot of companies out of business. Whereas the mining industry the commodity industry seems to be taking production off the market to try and boost prices.
Energy has been another big point. Have you seen mining companies really come to terms with energy efficiency and renewable?
I think I come from a background that's looking at sustainability and cleaner production. So I also worked in the air quality management field. I think there's if I go back 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, when you spoke about cleaner production, efficient energy and renewable energy, a lot of people didn't take notice of it. Now you see companies are talking about doing these things as though it's been normal for business, and that's fantastic and that's positive. And I think I see more and more companies using renewable energy efficient ways of doing business.
Absolutely. In Africa, we talk about Africa as a country, key growth points, specific countries to look out for in 2016.
That's very difficult to because Africa, I think, obviously we held ransom to the prices of commodities. There's also the issue around legislation, ease of doing business. So to me, if a company, I was looking at it today. There was a presentation. There's some paperwork that was put on all the delegate seats, and they ranked countries in Africa by ease of doing business. And I think if you go and have a look at that, the countries that make it easy to do business will be the areas where there's a lot of growth. And suddenly, it's strange enough, although it's not so much mining focused, the East African countries seem to be getting it right. And in one of the presentations, one of the guys spoke about using the Kenya model, where they don't have as much commodities, like some of the other African countries, but they moved away to look at other ways of doing business and how to grow the economies. And this speaker was suggesting that maybe perhaps the commodity-rich countries should learn from the Kenya example and not be enslaved or held ransom to having commodities. I've seen this before as well, where a lot of commentators say that Africa is cursed because of its commodities.
Commodity curse.
Yeah.
And it brings on to compliance. Are we legally over-legalized, or are we protecting our assets?
So just in terms of what?
I mean, a lot of
what
law and
specific
legislation, foreign investment coming in, there's a lot of loopholes to jump through. You talk about East Africa, a lot easier to do business there. What can we do to streamline the foreign investment into mining and stuff?
Look, into Africa, I think it's about cutting out a lot of red tape. There just seems to be a lack of people being in positions to make decisions and speed up the decision-making process. I think there needs to be some collaboration between government departments in countries, and in other cases there's a lot of training and capacity building that's required to make decisions and support those decisions. And I think Africa's been overprotective about its raw materials. There's a whole lot of benefit to having mining developments in the various jurisdictions, wherever it occurs, because mining with it brings other things. You've got employed workers generating tax revenue for the various governments' coffers, but also there's infrastructure that comes with it. And it does benefit the local economy. But having said that, it doesn't mean that mining companies should have carte blanche. They have to abide by the rules. I think one of the things that probably is saving Africa is not so much internal or local government controls, it's actually funders' requirements. So if you're getting funded by organizations like the European Bank, the World Bank, the IFC, I think they've put a lot of emphasis on doing business the proper way and the sustainable way. And I think that helps. And there's a lot more funders, certainly if you go beyond the banking sector, the private sector, and private equity companies, who are looking at it in a very different light to what maybe funders looked at in 10, 15, 20 years ago.
42 years of SRK Consulting, what's the next 42 years going to look like?
Well, I hope it's better, and I hope we can have an office in any country that's got a mining territory. If we can double our size. Look, we're not a numbers company in terms of having, many of our competitors probably have 4,000 or 5,000 employees. But we rather, I think we should be a quality company. So bringing experts into any area to practice, but at the same time develop local expertise, because that is the philosophy. And wherever we are, we try and bring in local expertise. Because we are an employee-owned company, and if local people can come and join us and do and practice their fields of expertise within SRK, that's great, and probably leads to more sustainable practices being out there, rather than practices where you come in just for the purpose of a project and then you leave.
Are you finding we're able to hang on to more of our talent these days?
I think SRK has. Certainly, I was speaking to somebody just now at the cocktail party, and yeah, I was telling her that we actually do have a lot of people who've stayed with the company for a long time. We do struggle to retain the young talent, but I think there is a place for them in the organization, and you've got to accept young people will leave the organization. I think our challenge now is to go out and attract people who've left the organization, for that matter, people who are in the 10, 15 year category of experience to come and join the organization. We do find people. The difficulty is getting people into the organization. But I think once they're there, they stay there for a long time.
Finally, the rand, how's that going to play havoc with the mining industry?
Well, as I said, the only advantage of the rand, the weaker rand, is it'll help our mining industry. But it's not the solution. There's plenty other things that can be done in the mining industry, so they don't rely on a weaker currency. Because a weaker currency in the long term does not benefit the country.
Mine closure is another big talking point. How can we sustainably close mines and reuse that land? I think agriculture is a big buzzword now.
Look, I mean, we are involved in a major project in South Africa, and I think we will be going out talking about that project. We're rehabilitating asbestos mines in South Africa, and I think there's plenty of opportunity for that in years to come. Certainly for a company like SRK to offer their services, and so from a business perspective, that's great. And I think in the long term, if it's done properly, you can turn around those kinds of properties to be used for other uses and to be the benefit of the communities.
And the social benefit there as well.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Okay,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
your time.